Good morning, North Dakota. It's Josh Askvig, and with me is Janelle Mose. We'll get to Janelle in just a little bit, hosting all things AARP North Dakota. We've been coming to you twice a month since May to talk about what's happening with AARP North Dakota in your communities, the advocacy work we're doing, and some fun add-on information that might be fun and useful to you all. And this is our last episode for the year, so we're excited to make a list, check it twice, and letting you know how nice of a year that we had. In other words, we're going to recap a very good year and talk about a big focus on some of our wins, especially in our advocacy work. But before we do that, Janelle, we started the year sitting side by side.
We
and
did.
now we're ending the year side by side.
We did, yeah.
Overall impressions of the year?
It was busy. It was busy, but it was really good. You know, I think we're constantly moving and looking for new and different ways to engage, with people in the community. And I think we found that this year.
We absolutely did. So with that, let's jump to AARP North Dakota in your community. This year we had a big focus in a couple of areas, the first of which was fraud. Some of you may not remember, some of you may remember, we did shredding events earlier this year where we touched almost 800 people, or 800 cars, I guess is the way we should calculate it. Where we shredded documents. We did some outstanding fraud lunch and learns where we heard from experts on preventing frauds and scams in our larger communities. And what a year it was in the fraud space. Never mind, we have some great volunteer spokespersons. I know you and I have been no stranger to our partnerships on KFYR and KBLY TV talking about fraud. Just tremendous work in the fraud space this year.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that people really look to us as an expert and really look for advice from us. And I think fraud is a way that we can engage members and volunteers. And our volunteers love talking about it and love educating the community about what to look for and how to prevent it. So.
Yeah, and if you are a NDSU Bison fan or a UND Fighting Hawks fan, you probably heard some of our fraud ads during their sporting events. And we've been doing some advertising there again, helping them understand it. And then Janelle touched on it, the volunteers. I think Doreen and I were talking yesterday. I think she said we did over 42 volunteer-led Speakers Bureau presentations this year, which is just incredible. So think about that. That's almost 4 a month. That's almost 1 a week I think we missed 10 weeks out of the year. Excuse me. Where a presentation wasn't being done. That's a lot of coverage as part of it. In addition, sorry, I got a little tickle in my throat. We did a lot of work in the livable space this year in the community, specifically around housing. In fact, you and I were just on a call about housing right before we popped on here to do this. But talk a little bit about the housing work we did specifically in Bismarck and West Fargo.
I think we've tapped into something that has been weighing on people's mind, and it really is what we've been coining as missing middle housing. So it really is that missing middle. So missing middle income, middle neighborhoods. How do we look at what currently exists, and how do we look at what people are looking for in communities? And it might not be a single family home. So we had 2 different really successful forums where we brought developers together with funders and some of our volunteers and city leaders to really talk about what does this look like? And if we're all on the same page, if this is what we want, how can we get there together? So I think, our role has really been convening those spaces just to allow people to have conversations. And then now it's kind of moving in all different directions, which is great, that we're helped start these conversations. So we see some pretty significant movement both in West Fargo and in the Bismarck-Mandan area coming next year.
Yeah, we also did walk audit training and demonstration in West Fargo. I didn't get a chance to get over to it, but I know you were there and got a chance to talk about walkability and making sure that folks that don't have access to a car can safely get to and from where they need to go. We talked a little bit about other transportation options in Bismarck. We'll talk more about that in the advocacy space as well. But just a big year in terms of trying to provide some community education, get policymakers understanding this is why it's important to build livable communities for all ages. Then the last thing I want to talk about in the livable space is the community challenge grants. 6 grants this year. Couple of unique ones that I think are really fun to highlight. You want to talk about the grocery store in Munich?
Yeah, in Munich, what we often know is when rural communities lose their grocery store, it often, other things start to leave. And so the community members in Munich said, we don't want to lose our grocery store. We want to make sure we have fresh food, access to that fresh food. And so they've moved to really a kind of a self-service model. So we helped pay for the key fob system that'll allow residents in Munich to go and grocery shop when it's convenient for them, which also offsets the need for having, someone staffing that grocery store all the time. So you still have access to fresh food, but it, eliminates that need for the workforce. So it's a really unique way of looking at doing a community challenge grant. I know other communities are really saying, wow, this is a great idea. So that was the one. And the other one that's really taken off is the University Park neighborhoods in Grand Forks. It's a very unique partnership between college students that live on campus or near campus, and then also you have residents that have lived there for a very long time. So partnering those groups up to say, hey, I want to learn more about how to budget, how to plan for my future. And then you've got residents that have been there that say, I would love to have someone come over and help do some projects at my house. So it's really blending the generations together and meeting the needs of them. And they just posted some pictures from their last party last night. And I mean, they've really tapped into something that, I think other communities could really learn from and grow.
Totally agree. I think that's been a lot of fun, and a lot of fun to just see how that has grown and developed and how they're building real relationships that I think will last beyond when some of those students graduate from college. I think that's great. In addition, in your community, we appreciate volunteers. We always recognize volunteers. Our Andrus Award recipient this year, what an outstanding gentleman, Everett Van Engelenhoven, founding the Furniture Mission, and the work he took. I think he founded it in 2017 or 2018. And the first year, I think they did like 27 projects or something like that. This year, I think it was over 100. Well over 100 families that they're helping with furniture donations. And it all started after he retired. He started this organization when he was 70 years old, this nonprofit organization from the ground up. It was 80. Marnie just corrected me, as she does, that he was 80 when he founded the organization. And they're just doing incredible work helping families and older adults and residents in their community access needed furniture. I think we've all been there where furniture is not cheap. And so lightly used furniture that they can upcycle and help others use. What an incredible thing. And he was just fun to talk to and get to know a little bit and the great work he's doing. And he made me want to go help him out in the project over in West Fargo. And so we were super excited to support the Furniture Mission of the Red River Valley. Anything else that's a highlight for you in terms of our community work this year?
No, I just think there is such a desire to get engaged and be civically involved, which I haven't seen that a lot in the last several years, really since COVID. But I think there is a movement of residents that really are genuinely interested in engaging with city leaders and finding ways to make their community better and really building those bridges. And I think if there's a way that we can help facilitate that, which we've done this year, and then really can build into that, I think there's a lot of potential for growth this year. So. It's
a great pivot into our our advocacy update this year. I've been with AARP. This is the start of my 13th year as part of it, and think about, we've had some tremendous years. So we've had big wins, when we passed Medicaid expansion in 2013, I think it was, when we got the CARE Act passed, when we've done some things. But I don't think I've ever seen a year where we had a whole effort from federal work, state work, local work, that we've put advocacy wins on the board like we have this year. We've been talking about local work, so let's go in the reverse order. We had a lot of action locally this year, new for us, new for our volunteers, but I think we're finding some momentum. Specifically, we had a big transit win in Bismarck and Mandan this year, where there was a potential to see some cuts to specifically paratransit services for individuals who don't qualify for Medicaid, which would have really hamstrung individuals' ability to get to work, get to medical appointments, get to where they need to be in their community. And so talk a little bit about the effort you led to organize volunteers. And I should say, not just you, Susan Dingle, who is one of our outstanding community volunteers here, and our new volunteer state president, Nancy Guy, were critical in this effort as well.
Well, and the issue came to us through our volunteers.
That's right.
Susan brought this to us and said, hey, I've been monitoring what's happening, both at the Bismarck City Commission and the Mandan City Commission, and this is a real issue for me. I think a lot of people take for granted that they just assume that everybody
Yep.
has cars in Bismarck,
Yep.
right? But I think there is a population of residents that really rely on this paratransit service. So Susan said, this can't happen.
Right.
We need to make sure, and she was the one that rallied us.
Yep.
She rallied Nancy. We made
Yep.
sure that we had volunteers in the room, that they were able to make public comments, but we really moved the needle to let the city commissions on both the Bismarck and Mandan side to say, this is really a key issue that you need to at least start to look at and maybe fund in the short term, but what's a long-term solution so that we make sure that residents that don't have access to vehicles get where they need to be.
Yeah, and I can tell you, having sat on the city commission and just reading the tea leaves, I think that funding was in, and that service was in real trouble multiple times. And it was our volunteers standing up and saying, we need this service. This is why we need the service. Working with our friends and partners with Bismarck Capital Area Transit, understanding that, talking to our volunteers, talking to commissioners and saying, this is an important service, talking to our disability advocacy friends, really delivering the message of, this is a needed service, and this little bit of funding is going to go a long way in ensuring folks can be a part of the community where they live. All right, so I think that's good. I think the other thing, a little more nuanced, and I think we're still trying to figure out where this has ended up, but there were some potential changes to the taxi service that could have impacted older adults and those with disabilities and their ability to access needed taxi service that we've been working on and in trying to work on. Nobody really thinks about taxi service when you think about transit, but in Bismarck and Mandan, there are 0 licensed taxi companies today. And so what that means is you're essentially on your own. You either have to access Uber or Lyft, which are fine, they're great, or there are a number of unlicensed taxi companies, but they don't have the insurance backing and some of the oversight that the city provides to ensure that it's safe, reliable, and meets the standards that the community needs. And so relooking at that ordinance, trying to provide the ability for these companies to become licensed so we know they have the appropriate insurances in place, but yet not risking the service for individuals with disabilities access when they need that service, I think is really important. And so again, I just want to give a shout out to Nancy Guy. She really led the effort as our volunteer state president to kind of help the city recognize it's easy to say we should just do away with these things, but who is being left out then? And why is it important to maintain some semblance of ensuring that these individuals get the same service that everybody else should? So a great win there. Let's jump up the rung just a little bit to the state level. We had 4 big priorities, and to get a win, you and I have talked about this. We had a goal of getting a win in 3 of those 4 big areas, and I think we thought 2 we could do for sure. I think 3 we were like, oh, this is going to be an issue, but we did it. I mean, we got a win in the prescription drug space, we got a win in the fraud space, and then we got a win in the access to home and community-based services. So let's talk about the prescription drug win first, because I think that's going to be some ongoing work into 2024.
And it was a win we didn't expect.
That's right. That's right.
When we sat here in these chairs in January, we had an original goal, but sometimes your original plan and your original goal, especially in policy work, doesn't work out. And so we were able to pivot and really work with legislators and other advocates to make sure that folks can afford their insulin, which we hear all the time in the news. Insulin is a life or death drug for so many people. And what legislators really rallied behind, which they called an old friend, because this was a conversation they've had in several legislative sessions. But we were able to partner with those groups and really push this over the hump that, really caps insulin costs at $25. It's only for state employees at this point in time. It also looks at the medical supplies, capping those expenses. We know that it's such a key thing, but the thing that you and I still can't get over is that next legislative session, PERS, the state public employee, they will have to bring a bill forward for consideration to expand this to the entire state. I mean, that's pretty significant that you could look at the entire state having a cap on their insulin costs. 20
plus years doing advocacy at the state level, never seen a bill that requires the next legislature to discuss another bill. So big win, very excited to see progress. Let's talk about the fraud win as well. I think this is another one. It's a place where I think we in North Dakota are leading AARP on this edge about trying to fight for fraud victims and ensure that fraud victims have access to resources and steps to be able to get back up on their feet if criminals or folks who are scamming older vulnerable adults that those folks that are a victim get the access to the support they need. So talk about the investment fraud restitution fund.
Yeah, this bill actually came to us from Senator Judy Lee and Commissioner Karen Tyler. It was something they were looking at the national level, and it was something we didn't expect to take such a hold in the legislature. And it really started the conversation that we've tried to start, is that you weren't duped, you weren't scammed, that they were targeted. And granted, it's limited to investment fraud, but I think it really opened the door to have the conversation that these are victims, they've been preyed upon, and that if you lose thousands of dollars, you should have some remedy, some recourse to go back and get that restitution fund. So we know it's not going to help everybody. We know it's just a first step, but it really opens the door to help not make victims whole, but at least get them on the path of recovery if they have been a victim.
Yeah, I think it's an important step. And again, if you want to learn more about that, you can go to aarp.org/ND fraud fund. Great resource for you. And hopefully you've heard about it. If you haven't, check it out. Also, North Dakota Securities Department, if you've been a victim of a scam, report it. Whether if it's an investment fraud scam, talk to the Securities Department. If it's a consumer fraud scam, talk to the North Dakota Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. Can't emphasize that enough. That's been a big push for us. Just had to get on my soapbox for a minute to say, report it. File the report. It's super important to keep track of what's happening. I think the other thing then to just talk briefly about is we continue to hear folks wanting to stay safe and independent in their homes and communities as long as possible. We were having this discussion. Marnie's behind the camera today, by the way. Marnie, Janelle, and I were having this discussion just a minute ago as we're headed into the holiday season about family caregivers and family caregiver supports, and there were some great enhancements to that funding in the legislative session to kind of continue that work. And then on the federal level, executive order on the federal level to really build a federal strategy and support family caregivers at the federal level, and really look at how can we support the 62,000 folks that are doing this labor of love in North Dakota every single year, never mind the millions that are doing it across the country. So anything you want to say about that work?
Yeah, I think we're going to focus on that a lot in 2024, but I think so many caregivers just do it because they know it needs to be done. And it's what you do for families in North Dakota. And I think some people don't have the option to age in place. It's their circumstance. And so you can't expect that if you don't have people that are there to help you and provide that service. So the caregivers really meet that need.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump onto the AARP North Dakota add-on. And we shouldn't have even called it an add-on today. We should have called it the AARP What We Do. Janelle, Marnie, Doreen, Wendy, and I get to do what we do because of our volunteers, because of the volunteers who step up every single day. You heard about the work they did for the Speakers Bureau presentations, those that all showed up in our AARP Day at the Capitol, those that showed up for AARP Legislative Lowdown, all of the different events that we've done. If you're interested in volunteering with us moving forward in 2024, you can do so. And you just need to visit aarp.org/I-want-to volunteer. Marnie's going to put it up on the screen here in just a second. It's I want to volunteer. Once you get there, you can select which ways you want to volunteer, whether that's being an advocacy volunteer, maybe you want to join our Speakers Bureau, maybe you just want to help check people in at events or help seat people at events, maybe you want to help our friends in driver safety or AARP Foundation tax aid partners as well. I think it'd be good. I want to just take a quick peek ahead and really look ahead to next year. I think there's two things. I'm going off script, Marnie. But there's two things that I want to highlight for next year that I think are going to be front and center for us as we look at this. We're going to continue to do fraud work. We're going to continue to talk about that. But a growing focus of our effort is Social Security. We know if Congress doesn't act in the next 9 years, beneficiaries on Social Security are facing up to about a 20% benefit cut. And so having the conversation about what is the status of Social Security, what is the importance of Social Security to not just older adults, but our communities and our families and the places we live. And so starting the discussion about what's it going to take to build a bipartisan consensus and solution to ensure that folks don't face up to a 20% benefit cut. And so you're going to hear us talking a lot about Social Security next year, about what the status of Social Security is, about what options may be to potentially fix this, and we want to hear from you. And so if you're interested in helping us out, we're going to show up in some different and unusual ways, I think, next year, which I'm really excited about, and I think will be a lot of fun. Some of you may have gotten a taste of our Plinko game and Social Security work. The second space, and I want you to talk a little bit about this because we're actually going to a meeting here shortly to talk a little bit more about this, but next year's an election year. Yes. And the importance of voting, and we know older adults vote in the highest propensity of any folks across the country, and we know you're going to be the difference in the elections next year. Whoever older voters choose is likely who's going to end up winning the elections next year. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit organization. We don't endorse candidates, we don't give to candidates, but we want to make sure you know what's on the ballot, who's on the ballot, and how you can cast your ballot. And so talk a little bit about some of the work we're going to be doing next year.
Part of it's just getting folks engaged, you know. Again, like I said, over the last year, we've seen so many people really want to be civically engaged, and what better way to do that than vote? So we're going to make it super easy for you to know when, where, and how to vote. We'll have a web page that's just dedicated to North Dakota specific, so you can go on there and find out all about the races that you can anticipate, either at the local level, at the statewide level, at the federal level. How do you look at what's on the ballot, and then how can you make sure that you know and have a good plan to get out there and vote? I mean, being civically engaged is something that we'll really, you know, dive into and really tap into this year. So.
It's not just candidates. There's going to be ballot initiatives likely. So look to AARP to help you understand how you cast your ballot, where you cast your ballot, and what's going to be on the ballot in 2024. So with that, looking at my list, I'm checking it twice. I think we figured out who's been nice. We haven't talked about any naughties. It doesn't matter. Nobody's getting coal from AARP this year. But I did want to say we've enjoyed doing this twice a month. We are not going to do a second one this month. This is it. People are going on well-earned and well-deserved vacations, and so we're going to take some time to celebrate the year with our families and friends and those that we love, and we hope you do the same. This is not going to be the last time you hear from us. We're going to come to you in some new and different ways in 2024. I'd encourage you, if you're interested in any of the stuff we've talked about today and figuring out how to help out, make sure you reach out to us, make sure you talk to us and engage with us. We'd love to talk to you about how we can empower individuals 50 and older to choose how they live as they age right here in North Dakota, just as our founder, Ethel Percy-Andrus, did as well. So with that, we're going to leave you with a fun holiday greeting as you head off into your holiday season. Happy New Year.